Today's a really fun day because we get to start a new project. Look at this bowl that I found at Value Village. I ordered all the flowers that I need for this project. It's going to be a replica of a wedding bouquet. I'm gonna try to have to fit a yellow rose in here, so I might have to deassemble that a little bit to flatten it enough to fit in this. I'm really excited about these sides. I feel like they might magnify the flowers really cool in a really interesting way. It will be a little bit abstract. It's not like so simple, you just see the beautiful flowers, but you can see this like kaleidoscope effect. I'm just about to go put the first layer of mold builder around this bowl, so I get to be popping in on this project for the next couple weeks, so let's film what we can, and this is gonna be super fun. So here's the bouquet of flowers that I get to work with. In it, there's Dusty Miller, which is the smaller white flowers. There's also Baby's Breath, yellow Gerber daisies, yellow roses, and the first thing that I did once I got the bouquet was put all the flowers in silica gel. I cut off the stems as short as possible so they would dry out completely. And for the roses, I actually took out the center and I crushed it down a little bit so that it would be flat enough to fit inside of the bowl. This kind of makes it look less like a rose, but it was necessary to fit it in the bowl. And I was gonna put the rose in the thickest part of the bowl, which is gonna be the bottom, so I can make sure that it's covered completely. And I only needed one rose for this project, but I wanted to have my bases covered, so I ordered a little bit of extra, which, spoiler alert, I needed them. For this project, I wasted a lot of resin and a lot of flowers, and there were multiple attempts. So let's just get straight into that and learn a lesson, because you know what they say, every mistake is a lesson. It's a good thing to make mistakes. I did it on purpose to show you guys the difference between a correct way to do something and an incorrect way to do something. So here I'm just pulling off some of the petals of this rose so I can flatten it out, and I try to use the silica gel to shape how I want the flowers to sit in the bowl. And roses take an extra long time to dry out, much longer than most things, so I would have to leave them for several days. I love working with silica gel. I'm so happy I started using it to dry out flowers. Pretty much like just playing in the sand. And then when you leave flowers in it for a little while, you kind of forget what else you put in there, and then you're like digging for treasure, and it's super fun, except you have to be very careful when rediscovering your dried flowers because it's really easy to break them, and it's kind of hard to go through the silica gel with knowing exactly where everything is. I've seen techniques where people use brushes to go very slowly, archaeological style, but I just risk it, and I don't really mind because when I put flowers in my resin most of the time anyways, it's torn petals. It's all about the color for me, the color and the texture, and I don't really care if it's in a perfect condition. So that's just kind of how I like to work. But also silica gel is reusable. You can redehydrate it in the oven, and I definitely love a reusable tool. If you guys want to check this out, link in the description as always. So here I've finished making the mold for the bowl. After a few days, I've built up enough layers of mold builder to peel it off and check how things are going. I do this really carefully with small little stretches at a time until I work it all the way off the bowl, and then I check if I need to do any more touch-ups with the mold builder where it might be a bit thin. Now that my flowers are completely dry and my mold is made, I can get to the fun part, which is getting out the resin and planning a little bit of a design for the bowl. So originally I wanted to have all three of the Gerber daisies surrounding the bowl, giving some nice triangulation. And then I wanted to throw in some of these orange slices because I thought they matched in color really nicely and would even add to the glow and vibrancy of the bowl. I also had dried out some Baby's Breath and some Dusty Miller to accent the flowers, and then the rose is going to be going on the bottom of the bowl, so you can see it right when you look inside of it. And I really wanted the bottom of the bowl to have the bottom of the rose because I think that looks really pretty with the leaves. I've done that before and I thought it was really successful, so I'm gonna try that again, except this time with a yellow rose. I love working with new colors and new flowers. I can't tell you how excited I was to work on this project. So I prep the mold with a little bit of resin, and then I dip all of my flowers in the resin before putting them in the bowl, just to avoid as many air bubbles as possible. And I also thought this would help it slide into the mold better. But like I said before, I don't mind that I'm crunching up the petals a lot. It's all about the color and the texture, and a lot of the beauty will still come through. So I wasn't worried about how awful I was treating these flowers, that I took such care to preserve them properly, because I knew the color is what's important. And then I try putting the rose at the bottom of the bowl, and here are the beginning of several mistakes. So when I started adding the resin, it started to chunk up a little bit too fast. I was working in the sun, so it cured way faster than I thought it would, and it just didn't work out very well. And I didn't even think beforehand to reinforce the mold insides, because latex molds are really weak. It would deform. So I last minute shoved a towel in there, because I also noticed that the inside of the bowl was leaking. So I obviously didn't make the latex mold secure enough before trying to pour this. And yeah, it only took about 30 seconds for this entire project to become a train wreck, from relaxation to complete anxiety. So I wait another half day before I try unmolding it, and I can already tell that it is so deformed and not at all a piece that I could give to anyone. So I bask in my failure for 5 minutes and then start from scratch. Luckily, my florist had a lot more flowers and she gave me a great deal, but she actually included a few free ones too, so I really appreciate her for doing that. Now we know what to fix for the second bowl. I don't know why, but for every big commission, I always have to do 2. One day I might learn, one day I might be professional enough, but let's get started with this drying process all over again. So I reinforced the inside of the mold with one more layer of mold builder, making sure all the holes that were open or that were torn open are closed and fixed so it will not leak again. Then I decided a day later to pull out a couple of the daisies from the silica gel so I can try drying them and pressing them in the microwave. I've tried this in previous videos and it turned out really well. It actually lets the flower keep a lot of its strength and gets all the moisture out, so it stays really vibrant as well. I don't see any downsides to using the microwave, and this way it'll also keep the flowers really flat, so maybe they'll go into the bowl a little bit easier. So just really quickly, the way that I press flowers in the microwave, I use these 4 ceramic tiles and put the flowers between a sheet of paper, and then over the sheet of paper I use a piece of paper towel. This is just to absorb all the moisture, and then I throw it in the microwave for about a minute 30 seconds, a minute 15 seconds, and I just really keep an eye on it. And I think they turned out really nicely, so I didn't have to wait all those days again to retry this project. And I already had a previously flattened rose, so I could just use that. So luckily this mistake didn't slow me down too much. And then to fix the third problem that I had with the first bowl, I created this tin foil paper filling for inside of the bowl, the perfect shape so that none of the sides of the bowl would collapse or deform in any way, and that I could just let it cure in a perfect circle, which is really key when you're trying to make a bowl. So this time I try a little bit different for the design. For the previous bowl, I thought more was more, so I wanted to shove a lot of different stuff in there. This time I kind of held back and I only put in 2 Gerber daisies on opposite sides, and then to connect them I used these beautiful large leaves of eucalyptus, some of the baby's breath, and just a little bit of the Dusty Miller. I also used a couple rose leaves that I had pressed in a book earlier. I only used a couple of these because there was only going to be 1 rose in the bowl, and then I only work on the sides of the bowl this time. I decide that I'm going to unmold the bowl before finishing the bottom, and then I can put the rose in the bottom once the sides have cured, and just to make sure that everything is going well. So I'm pulling petals from the yellow rose here just to mix in the sides of the bowl. Since I'm using the rose at the bottom, I really want it to be as flat as possible, so it doesn't have to be ridiculously thick on the bottom. And I also think it helps pull the flower throughout the piece, so there's like a full cohesive look. This is turning out to be the brightest, most vibrant project I've ever worked on before. So after the bowl was fully cured after 24 hours, I had to pull out the tinfoil ball that I used inside the bowl to keep its structure. So I got some pliers to that, and after enough yanking, I eventually got it out. I used a parchment paper to put the bowl on because it won't stick to that and it won't rip it or anything. It just works really well with resin. I inspect the sides and I think it looks really good. It's a kind of a chunky texture, so I definitely will have to add a few top coats, but there's plenty of time to do that along the way. So I just prep the bottom to add the rose. I pour a little resin and then I let that cure for a few hours, and then I add the rose and then add layers of resin on top of that. Once that has all semi-cured, I pull it off the parchment paper and just cut off the excess resin. Because it hasn't been fully cured, it won't crack or anything, so I just get some scissors and do that really quickly. And then I get out my Dremel to just finish up the bottom edges and make it into a perfect shape. I hate the dust from sanding things, it gets everywhere, and it was a real pain to make sure I got it off this bowl before I started to add another top coat, because I didn't want to seal any of that dust inside with the bowl. I'm obsessed with this perfect star on the bottom of this rose. Like, it completes it for me. That's probably my favorite part of it. I really need to work with more yellow flowers in the future because I am captivated. I work on how I'm going to deliver the item, so I make these watercolors that are kind of similar to the colors in the bowl with this yellow and green. So I measure out the bowl to make the perfect size box for it. Normally I have all my templates cut out so this part doesn't take so long, but since this was a custom order and I just had to start from scratch, but this is the general template that I use for all my boxes. Using some sort of mixed media watercolor paper and then giving a little bit of extra paper for folding the sides to just make it look really clean, and then using a hot glue gun to secure all the sides. I always do the bottom of the box first so I can make sure that the lid will fit. Since I'm doing this 2-piece box by hand, I've made a lot of lids that just don't fit and it's basically garbage at that point. So I make sure to add a ½ centimeter on each side so that the lid can be easily taken off. And I keep checking along the way to make sure I'm not folding it too tight. And here are the final results. I'm really happy that I got a chance to work on this bowl. Preserving wedding bouquets is so fun and special to me because it's basically somebody's favorite flowers, a collection of their favorite flowers, and I get to like reimagine it into my own resin piece. It's already something so beautiful, and then I get to use them as materials in a whole new way. It was just so fun to do, and it's really rewarding, and I'm just captivated by how beautiful it is. So there's one kind of bigger imperfection that upset me a lot at the time. The bottom of the bowl on the inside is a little bit foggy. The resin, for some reason, I poured it and then it cured with this fog, and it's not something that I could have fixed with another top coat or anything. But I accepted it quickly enough and moved on because it still glowed so beautifully, and I really wanted the rose to be a really subtle background component in the first place. And this has got to be my favorite resin project that I've done so far. So I just wanted to check in for a final review since I will be sending this away tomorrow. I'm really happy with how put together this flower is. I'm honestly surprised. I didn't expect it to go that well. On this side, you can tell this one like went through a lot, but I still love the movement that it gives. All the petals are like bunched into one way, especially on the inside. I think it looks really cool in there. I'm really happy with the choice of eucalyptus to accent everything. It's not too vibrant of a green, and I think it matches the Dusty Miller really well, but it's just not as like crazy and busy as the Dusty Miller. And this pattern is like bending the light and making light hit the flower in different ways, so you get to really see like a range of yellow in there. Even when there's no sunshine, it's doing that effect, so that's really why I wanted to do the pattern glass. It kind of magnifies it in certain ways too, and I love that the center of this daisy is like right on this circle thing, and then surrounded by all these diamonds. I'm really excited to pour this bowl again now that I know how to do it properly. I think I could make some really cool stuff, and we still have some leftover materials from this project, so I'm going to be delivering this bowl myself in my van tomorrow. So I don't know if I mentioned, but it's in celebration of a 4th year wedding anniversary, so I hope she likes it, and I'll see you guys around.